think we're good. Hello, everyone. I am Amy Pearce Stone of Her Art from the Attic. You may have seen me on YouTube, Facebook. The kids are in bed. Shh. All 5 of them. I am so excited to be working with Strathmore this month on the pastel series. Are you guys ready? This is what we're going to learn today. Color prism bubbles. We're going to be doing 2 lessons, 2 oil pastel lessons. This one's the first one. And 2 soft pastel lessons. So, buckle up, Chuck. What do we need to get started? I am going to use Strathmore's Artagain paper. It's amazing. It's so smooth, and it can take a beating, man. Let's use the black, coal black color. It's a nice contrast with the bright oil pastels. I'm going to be using Van Gogh. You want to get a nicer set of oil pastels, or else, you know, you may as well get crayons. Grab a few different circular things you can trace. You'll need something to trace with. You could grab a lighter pencil, which will give you marks like this, although it kind of scratches small dents into your paper, or it can. I prefer to use pastel pencils. I'm going to use the ones from Van Gogh. Like, you barely have to touch the paper and it just glides on. So I am so ready to get this party started. Who's with me? I'm going to tape down my paper. This is optional, but I like the border it gives it. I like that it sticks to the table. And then I'm just going to grab my ultramarine blue pastel pencil and start tracing various size circles. Now, I am not being totally random with this. I am thinking about the composition. In other words, when I am done with this piece, where will my eyes be drawn? What is the flow of the drawing? And so I'm going to leave a lot of negative space to help emphasize the flow of the drawing. I want it to kind of seem like there's just these bubbles, these colorful bubbles flowing through space. Let's start experimenting with the oil pastels. Now, this project is about experimentation. It's about learning the basic techniques of oil pastels. But rewind, I just said it's about experimentation. I'm going to suggest things, and I'm going to tell you rules that other people have made about oil pastels. I'm also going to tell you that you can break the rules, because there's a lot to be discovered that has not been discovered yet. And a lot of times the only way to do that is by breaking rules, right? Red, yellow, and blue. That's what I've grabbed, the primary colors. I'm cleaning off the yellow because somebody did not clean it when they put it back last time. It was me. But you just grab a cloth and wipe it off. Okay, choose a shape. Start scrubbing around the edges with blue. And you're going to make it thicker by pressing harder at the edges, and then you're going to press softer and lighter and make your strokes further apart as you go toward the center. And this can help you blend the next colors that you put into it. Now, with pastels, you blend the colors while they're on the paper. Do the same thing with red. Find a shape. Do the same thing with yellow. Harder lines around the edges. It tapers into the middle. And you can see I've left some of it just black. And then I'm going to grab that yellow, and I'm going to go to the center of the red space. And I'm just going to fill in the middle quite firmly, and then I'm going to scrub it into the red. And as I'm scrubbing into the more tapered off parts of the red that we had laid down, it's blending the pigment together. So you're getting this value scale that goes from red to yellow. So you've got orange in there in the middle, but all you had to use were the 2 colors. It certainly can be fun to use multiple colors, and we'll do that later. Let's do red in the middle of blue. Same thing. Make it bold in the middle. Push it into the blue around it. Figure out what feels right to you and what feels good to you and what gives you the effects that you want. Now, there's a lot of people that like to see the lines from the oil pastels. Again, that's a preference thing. Some people will tell you that you're evil if you blend, and I don't think that's true. Chunky pastels can be beautiful, and smooth pastel can be beautiful. You be you, man. Don't let anyone tell you differently. Let's talk about one of those rules. A lot of people will say, when using oil pastels, you must only go from dark to light when you're blending color values. Now, you can see, what am I doing? I'm using a dark hue of blue, and I'm blending it into the yellow. I am breaking a rule, folks. Now, it is true that if you go light to dark, there is certain vibrancy and depth that you will find harder to achieve, because the light hues and pigments will be emphasized when you put them over the dark. However, when you put the dark over the light, it mutes the tones. But that can be maybe something you want. So I just did light to dark. I just broke a rule. Now, you may look at that and think, sister girl, they were right. Or you may look at that and say, whoa, okay, I could see where both applications could come in handy. So I'm going to show you side by side here. Now I'm going to use the same two colors, blue and yellow, and I am going to go dark to light. We've got the dark blue hue. Now I'm going to lay down the brighter color second instead of first. So I'm pushing it down, pushing it into the paper, and then pushing it into the blue. So I am going to let you make up your own mind about this. Do you feel like there should be a rule, dark to light or light to dark? Or can you see the beauty in both? I'm going to speed things up again, and we're just going to keep filling in the spaces with different color combinations. And here's where I really want you to start to experiment. Now, I want you to use different textures, and you can get different textures by laying down the oil pastels in different ways. Like maybe it's flowing, maybe it's chunking, maybe you're dabbing. You can use a blender, a blending stump like you see here. If you use that, just know that sometimes the oil pastel can be a little bit delicate. So if you rub it too ferociously, then you can get big clumps, although you might want that again, right? But be delicate and get a feel for your pastel. Pastels are different, so what works in certain brands might not work for others. But see what you like. Do you like it really smooth? Do you like it kind of chunky? You know, this isn't peanut butter, but we all have our preference. Now let's see what happens when we use white or black to lighten or darken things. This is certainly an option, but here's white, and it's going to give us a really light blue, and I want to put more blue in, so I'm just going to layer and layer and layer and then blend a little bit. And what happens if I put black down in the blue? It gets really dark. What happens when I do black first instead of blue? What happens when I do blue first? And then you layer, layer, layer. Now that's pretty dark. You'll see later that I completely transformed those. But I just wanted to show you what you can do. Now if you don't like something, just scrub it off. And this paper is amazing because I am going to town. And it is just staying sturdy and resilient. It's amazing. So I'm blending, experimenting, putting more black, more blue. I just put some white to brighten it up. I'm not loving it, but I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep working at it. I wanted to see what would happen if I put a little black over there. And now I'll fill in blue here. And I wanted to see in this one what happens if I put some different color combinations. So I did blue and then white, and now I'm going to darken the blue with orange. Why? Because orange is the opposite of blue. So it's going to darken it. So if you don't want it quite so dark as what happens with black, but you just want some striking contrast, then try using opposites. Now I'm just totally changing it. I'm adding red and pink and blending it, and oh, I'm liking that purple color, but you can see the little little specks of orange, and now I'm making that one yellow. It's so fascinating with oil pastels that you can just layer and layer and layer, and you can kind of predict how it might turn out, but you also are kind of at its mercy. But you just keep experimenting and don't give up. And, you know, from my experience, most artwork has ugly stages. Whoa, speaking of ugly stages, I don't know about you, but boy, let's do something to that. How about blue? How about a splash of blue? Doesn't it just strike? Isn't it striking off the black? Blue to purple, maybe a little bit darker around the edges. Blend it in. Let's brighten it up a bit. I love that the black from the black undertones from the paper are coming through, giving it texture and depth. I'm going to turn the little sliver by it a little muted red and blue and purple. Now I'll just go keep filling in and experimenting. Let's do some turquoise with green and blue, and you know, have a color wheel in front of you if you're not familiar with the primary colors, the secondary colors, and so on and so forth. You know, if you get confused, just look at the wheel and know, okay, unless I want it brown and muddy, I should steer clear of blending this color from the one directly across from it or semi across from it, right? Stick to the colors that are between two primary colors and you'll get colors that blend really well. But again, experiment, because you might discover things you like. You can, like I showed you there before, I did use the opposite color to purposefully muddy down and darken my red. I used the green, right? So, experiment. This whole project is for you to experiment. Don't be rigid. Don't give yourself too many rules. And if you find yourself giving yourself too many rules, then break a few. See what happens. You might like it, you might not. I'm kind of adding like 6 different colors in this one. Let's see what happens if I put green and red and yellow and orange and white. Now, you know, when you're using white, you got to know what's going to happen at the end if you're desiring a certain result. So like if I add white to red, it's not going to make it a brighter red, it's going to make it a pink. So, you know, you just think about those things. Oh, so pretty. I love turquoise. It's one of my favorite colors. But I love using 2, 3, 4, 5 colors. Just making them pop. And it's not hard to do on that black paper. It's exciting when the pastels just flow onto your paper. Like for realsies, guys. Use nice pastels, as nice as you can afford. Save money other places. Not on oil pastels. Now I'm just putting a tiny line of white around the border of the bubbles. I was experimenting at this point, wasn't sure if I'd like it. Then I put a little yellow because I kind of wanted them to look like there was a haze around them, and I wanted to blend that with the stump because I didn't want aggressive lines. So it's making them pop a little bit. I'm not sure if I loved it, but then I wanted to really create a little more contrast, and so I'm adding some really thick black around the edges, but then I taper it off toward the bubbles, and then I'm going to blend the dark into the hazy light that I just did around the circles. Just little tricks to make things pop. You can leave it there. Any point in this, you can be done. But I just tend to keep going and going and going until sometimes I don't know when to stop, but I love experimenting. I love creating. Now I'm going to see what happens when I add a little shadow, like a cast shadow underneath each bubble. And I'm just using black, although I could have used the opposite colors. But I kind of got hasty, to be honest. Anyway, I loved the way that the shadows turned out. To sign my name, I'll teach you another little texture trick. Grab something pokey, I've got a toothpick here, and just carve your signature right in there. And you can do tons of stuff with that. It's so much fun. It works the best if you're carving into a color that is really a stark difference in hue and value from your paper. So that's a really bright green, really light. And so when I scraped off the oil pastel, the black showed through. Showed. Now I'm taking off the tape to reveal the end result. I'm using that little brush because I had some oil pastel on my fingers I didn't want to get onto the border. But there is so much fun, and again, I could have kept going and going, but I think we stopped at a pretty good place. Now you need to decide if you want to put a finishing spray on your artwork. Oil pastels, they do not dry. So I like to put sealer on mine. It stops it from smearing and smudging. You can even lay more layers on top of it afterwards that will not blend with the colors underneath, which can make for some cool textures and technique. But I like to just do a very light spray, wait a minute or two till it dries, do another light spray, and then I'll do 3 or 4 sprays. And I'm telling you, one time I had a soft pastel, and that stuff, I mean, you just breathe wrong and the pastels can go everywhere. But it got water spilled all over it, and it was perfectly fine because I had the finishing spray on it. It was a little darker, but I was amazed. So there you have it. You've just completed this exercise experiment, but it is cool enough to frame, yo. Okay guys, thanks for watching, and come back for the next lesson because this is a series of 4. We've got 2 oil pastel lessons, 2 soft pastel lessons, and we're going to progressively learn more and more cool and fun things. So, we will see you later. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Was that fun? I loved it. Bubbles. Bubbles. Thank you for being interested in this, and let's talk. Let's conversate. Isn't there a forum somewhere? Let's join it. I'm in. Come back next week, because magic's gonna happen. Magic. Hi everyone, I am Amy Pearce Stone. I just did this, like, I watched too many kids shows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's right. Just ask this guy, who used to be this guy. I don't know. What can you do? I love him.